Today we are finishing the presentation, and you're going to have time to start on your end of chapter problems. I've written them up there. Some of you may not be able to see them from the flag. It's number 1, A and B only. Number 3, A and B. 4 and 6, A and B. 10, A through C, and 10A, or 7, A through C, and 10, A and B. So, just a few selected into chapter problems, but some of them are fairly lengthy and will take you some time. So you'll have some time to get started on those today. All right, so the question is, how big should government be? We got a little bit into this yesterday. We had finished with our discussion of the underground economy. So, what happens when we change how much we are taxing, how big our tax is? Okay. We might raise a tax, we might lower a tax. The reasons for doing those things are more an issue of a public policy, government, political science kind of class than they are an economic discussion. But when it happens, what happens to both deadweight loss and tax revenue? And those two things are always going to move in opposition to one another. If deadweight loss increases, tax revenue is going to decrease. If tax revenue increases, deadweight loss should decrease. Is it possible for both to decrease simultaneously? Only if the elasticity of a good involved in the taxation were to change for some reason. Okay. All right, so deadweight loss and how big your tax is. Start with our tax of T. What would you call these elasticities? Pretty unit elastic, okay? So there's your initial deadweight loss. Let's double the tax. There's our new deadweight loss. Does it double? Probably more than doubles, right? Okay. So, let's triple the tax. If some tax is good, lots more is better. So then it more than triples. Okay? Look at how much welfare is being lost to the tax. Okay? So when a tax increases, deadweight loss goes up even more. Okay? Right? So no matter how much it increases, deadweight loss is going to increase by that much and then some. Yes, Sean?
So a while back you said you'd increase taxes if like you were president or whatever. Why would that be then?
Because there are some programs that the government pays for that society has pretty well said we're not ready to give up these programs. And those programs are currently underfunded, so they have to be paid for in some way. Okay? So, when tax rates are low, if we raise them just a little bit, the deadweight loss only goes up a little bit, right? Following this curve. When you're down here at the bottom, if you raise the tax a little bit, deadweight loss only goes up a little bit plus. Right? See that point where deadweight loss begins to increase at a greater magnitude than the tax increase? This upward sloping curve becomes pretty dramatic at the end, right? You get very little more revenue and magnitudes larger deadweight loss. Okay? So when tax rates are very, very, very high, it doesn't do us much good to increase the tax more. It actually, in net effect on the economy, is much worse to increase the tax more. We would be better off decreasing that tax, and if revenue is the issue, perhaps increasing the tax or creating a new tax on something that had not been previously taxed. We can create more welfare by decreasing a tax whose deadweight loss is tremendously large and taxing something else.
Is that why communist countries have terrible
Oh, Gavin, that's far too simplistic a way to put it. There are lots of reasons why communist countries have terrible economies. Taxation would probably be at the low end of that list. Incentives fail to exist much in a communist economy. That's probably their biggest problem. All right. So now revenue as related to the size of the tax. So here's our tax. Okay. We're going to increase the tax. Our revenue, our tax revenue goes up, doesn't it?
Yep.
What does our tax revenue become? Becomes a box the size of the tax, right? So in between the price buyers pay and the price sellers receive is our tax revenue. Woohoo! We got lots more tax revenue. Yeah. Oh, it's a good chunk more. It's maybe half again as much more. Okay. When it's a large tax, if we cut the tax, revenue's going, or I'm sorry, when it's large, when it's already that large, if we increase it, our tax revenue is actually going to go down. So you get to a tipping point, just like with deadweight loss, where the bigger you make your tax, the less good it does you. You actually are overtaxing and losing revenue because you're taxing so much.
Is that the idea?
And this is
leaving the market?
Yes, this is even true for inelastic or mostly inelastic goods. People will do everything they can to try and find some sort of substitute.
So in the short run, is it like good for the government to tax more, but then it comes back and like bites in the butt?
Yes, and here's why that doesn't matter much. For government action to take place, because taxes are a congressional or a legislative thing at the smaller levels of government, nothing moves fast. So short run pretty much doesn't exist for them. If they wanted to increase it in the short run and then quick turn it back after they'd sucked all of the short-term revenue out of it that they could, they'd hardly ever get around to it. And very rarely do they write a natural rollback tax where they say tax is going to increase until the 17th of December and then it'll roll back, because what would you do as a consumer?
Wait.
Right.
Always don't help.
Okay. All right. So our friend Laffer came up with this curve to show us the relationship between the size of the tax and the tax revenue we're going to get. Unfortunately, it's not as funny as the name implies. Sean informs me that this is a parabola. I think it looks like the St. Louis Western Gateway Arch. So, also known as a parabola. Yeah, that's too mathy for me. It's a humpy thingy. What it tells you is you reach a certain point in your taxation where any more that you increase it, your revenue will begin to decline. No. Go take theoretical economics if you want the equation.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, but it's dependent upon the goods that you're considering and their elasticities, and it's, yeah. It is item number 718 into why I'll never have a master's in econ. Okay? Questions about any of this? To make it stick in your minds, you must really think about it and apply it, which is why practice problems are the way to go here. It is not practice time.
I got excited.
Nope. It is. We're done time.
Oh, mine's even more hit.
Oh, that's even more exciting than practice time. I'm running through these so that if you go back and watch them, you can at least pause it and take a look at them.
I don't know, the one before you did